wave to Daddy Troy. Daddy Troy. Daddy. Good, Troy, man at the way, boy. Uh-oh. circumstance.
A man can have a long...
Proudly brought to you by Sasol Dual Fuel and Ford Racing. Well, as we get towards the final stages of this championship with 6 more races to go, including these two here at AAK Lama, it's been a 3-way battle between young Chargers Jonathan du Toit, Brett Mabry and Morna Jurgens, with du Toit leading Brett Mabry by 23 points and Morna Jurgens only 6 points further down. 6 victories so far for du Toit, with 3 including the last 2 behind the name of Brett Mabry, and Morna Jurgens has won 2 races already.
Morna second on the grid, still behind Jonathan though.
Yeah, I know, second on the grid is good, you know, we're 0.2 or 0.3 behind him. Our last race meeting we were, I think, second half behind him. Yeah, and we hung in there. Yeah, so it's looking good for the first race.
Now the season seems to be a ding-dong battle, and Formula Ford seems to be getting that much more exciting.
Yeah, I think it's the most exciting racing in South Africa at the moment. Maybe not as big as the other classes, but entertainment-wise, yeah, it's good.
A nice and strong field gathered here at AAK Lama today. 23 cars will be starting the first race of the day, round 15. 11 of them in the Premier Division, that is for the more modern Z-Tech 1800cc engines. And the other division is the First Division, of course, and that is for the older Kent class engines. And those are 2 separate championships. That's the way they will line up, with Jonathan du Toit once again in pole position, just ahead of Morna Jurgens and more than a second ahead of his brother Mark du Toit. Time to get down to concentration now in the Kent class. It is championship leader Brian Krailing who has pole position. Nothing between him and Andy Brown, with Matthijs Strydom and Alan Meyer on the second row. Let's join our commentators Peter Wise and Nino Venturi.
So Jonathan du Toit in car number 3 in his fairly regular pole position on the grid here on the Ford 100 Years of Racing Day on the Vodacom Road Show. Of course, of late he's had a lot of pressure from the men alongside him, and just behind him Morna Jurgens in the truck 10 red car, behind him Brett Mabry. That's the way they've lined up here, but we could well see Mabry come through very, very quickly. He's won the last 2 races last time out. Adaldo Scribanti getting the engines revved up, off they go, and they all seem to go fairly clearly. Mabry not as quick maybe as he would to. Jonathan du Toit, not to confuse matters too much, he's the yellow car with the black nose. His brother has the red nose behind them, but already it's Morna Jurgens making a fine charge to the front of the field, Nino.
Yes, it was Morna Jurgens having a fantastic start from Jonathan du Toit. Brett Mabry up in 3rd place with Mark du Toit, Jonathan Butter in 4th, and Harman van Beek in 5th place.
And the battle for the minor points position is already ensuing there, with the likes of Warren Campbell, Martin Robinson, and Herman van Beek too in the all well-turned-out green car. This is where you've got to keep it very, very tight. They come down the old Nashua Straight into Goodyear Corner. Then they'll go through up to the Ford part of the complex before they go up the hill to the West Bank shop. And they go down towards the Ford area sweep left and right up the hill, and you've got to make sure that you keep it on the black stuff all the time. It's fairly dusty on certain parts of the circuit today.
Yes, indeed, Peter. I think they're fighting for the championship. They're very close, so they can't afford to make a mistake. Here, Jonathan is looking for a gap, but I don't think Morgay going to make it any easy for him. And Jonathan must watch out because Brett Mabry is close behind, and any mistake will allow him to come through.
And of course, neither of these two can actually afford to take themselves out of the race, because that'll let Maybury maybe just close up on the overall championship scenario, which is going to make it an open affair all the way through. Still 2 more race meetings to go after this one at AA Kyalami. 23 points the gap from Du Toit back to Maybury, and then only 6 back to Mornay Jurgens, who now has the lead going through, and he takes the chicane superbly. Nobody going off-road at this particular point of time. Imran Kamruddin coming through there. Also Zach De Silva and his well-turned-out Lamborghini branded, the yellow car. Formula Ford Zetec 1800 cc's of horses under the motors here. All, of course, dyno-tuned to equal spec. So it's really down to the drivers, how well they keep it together and how much they... On Mornay Jurgens on lap 2.
Peter, you know, we had something similar in P, where we had 4 cars fighting for first place, and for about 10 laps until they pick up to the Burke markers, there was no quota given. So it looks like a similar scenario here with Mornay doing the running, Jonathan, Brett and Mark close behind, and because of the way the championship is, none of them can really make a mistake. So they have to be pushed to get in front, but they have to be careful not to be left behind. So it's really difficult.
Martin Robertson in the white Leroy Sober car here, pushed hard and now being passed by Warren Campbell. I thought that might have happened a bit early on, but Robertson doing a fine job, the young man from karting days, now in what is known as a Zetec Challenger car, slightly older than some of the newer cars, running up at the front of the field, and there are a whole bunch of new Zetec chassis and cars coming into South Africa as well. Now Jurgens, it is, he's got double pressure right now, because he's got the 2 yellow canaries of Du Toit in second, and then Maybury in the investment cars, Miguel, right behind him as they come down the mine shaft. Oh, this is where he's going to try and sneak through, and he's going to do a fine job too, leaving too much of a gap, although it was only a millisecond, but he might grab it back, Mornay Jurgens, and he does, but Du Toit is not going to let that lie, and that's the result. That's how close it is. Fortunately, he didn't put too many wheels onto the dirt. He's lost a little bit of ground, but then he's making it up all over again.
Yes, I think Jordan went for the inside, he held his ground, then Brett outbraked him on the inside, and there was no space. Jordan went a bit wide, but thank goodness he managed to stay on the road, so the fight goes on. I mean, it's close. At this pace, you know, Peter, you can't really make mistakes. You
can't make any mistake down the pit straight again, and look how close it is right now, but Jurgens is going to have the inside line. Yes, he maintains his minimal lead here. Du Toit putting on the pressure, and maybe in a way, with the Jurgens having to defend to some extent, that's allowing Brett Maybury to put his nose in and just remind them that he is there. This is not a 2-horse race, it's a 3, and Mark Du Toit is in the other SWAT Corps car, is right behind them, and in fact he's closing quite smartly.
Yes, Mark, I mean, he hasn't done many races this year because of business and study commitments, but now he's going to do the last 3 races. He'll be here for the full season next year, and I mean, he's got a fantastic motor car, well prepared by Stuart Thompson, and I mean, he's as quick as anybody else. He just needs a bit of race practice, and the way they're going, I mean, Peter, you know, it could be Mark's race for that matter.
Absolutely, or for that matter, anybody behind him. That's the way it can and usually does happen in the closeness of Formula Ford as they go through up on the hill, through the Ford complex, now up to Westbank yet again. Those Avon tyres squealing just a bit with a bit of late braking, side pods wobbling a little bit too. Those are not really aerodynamic aids. They are on the side of the cars from a safety point of view in case there might be a side impact to protect the drivers, and these cars are superbly built too in terms of driver safety. Breaking away just a little bit now, these two are Mornay Jurgens, followed by Jonathan Du Toit, actively involved he is with his father in the running of the SWAT Corps Raceway. Little nudge, just reminding you, I am there. We'll see the scars on the nose after this, I'm sure, and then another battle happening for second, because now Mark Du Toit has put on the pressure. He's right on the gearbox of Brett Maybury, and in a way that's allowing the front two to have their own battle, because I think that Maybury is to a certain extent defending as opposed to charging.
Peter, yes, because he's also in the fight for the championship. And I mean, he had a fantastic race, he won, and he closed the gap on Jonathan. But now he has to try to contain damage if he can keep up with the leaders. So it will be quite a problem for him. But look, Jonathan is not going to let Maybury off. I mean, Mono Jürgen off his side, because if Jürgen wins, it will close the gap a lot more in the championship. So it will be fantastic going to P and East London. But
Only 100th of a second between the front two, and between the other two, only another 100th of a second between the two groups up front, and following behind them, only 2 seconds at the moment, and already these very, very quick and slick Ford Zetec cars are starting to catch up on some of the slower Kent cars. Of course, their heritage has been around for as long as Formula Ford has been around in the world, and in South Africa, which is now over 30 years, a third of the history of the Ford Motor Company since 1901, when they first started racing. Can you believe, a Model T? And things have come on dramatically in terms of model on the racetracks too. With, at the moment, I can tell you, in the Kent class, the 1600cc Formula Fords, Andy Brown and is having a great battle with Brian Krailing. Not much, about 0.4 of a second between the two now. We saw the nose coming in there. Now we're going to see a battle up front. Here it is, the old traditional Tyson versus Lennox Lewis scenario in Formula Ford in South Africa. Andy Brown up front there in the Airx car, being followed by Brian Krailing. And I can tell you that after a runaway start to the season, Andy Brown's fortunes have changed over the last while, to the extent that he is now a good couple of points down on the man just behind him in the UPS Signs van Diemen. That's Brian Krailing. And Krailing maybe knows that he doesn't have to go out and win this one, because his points lead, the 83 to the 57 of Brown, right now isn't critical at this particular time. He can hang on there. We're seeing, unfortunately, Herman van Beek with side pod damage come in and retire from this particular encounter. But it's very much a case of Brown and Krailing all over again as they scream down past the finish line one more time. Not much age gap between these two either. The car up front is slightly older than the one behind him. Brown with the pink and red helmets, and behind the man who works in the aeronautical industry, Brian Krailing. Head-to-head down. Nina, prediction, who's going to come out the corner first?
I think it will be Jonathan, because he's got the inside line. Unfortunately, Jürgens went a bit wide at the top at West Bank, and Jonathan was quick enough to go on the inside, and he had the upper hand now for going down. Now it all remains if Monet can sell him Madame and retake the lead. You know, it's very important. Monet has got everything to lose by finishing second. So he really, I think, is going to be on the charge. You remember last time he came in with minus a nose cone because he went 110%, Peter. So I think you can expect some fireworks here.
Give an inch and you lose an arm. Right now, still holding on to third position, it's Mark Dutoy in the Swartkorps car, the investment cars car of Brett Maybury, just behind. And Maybury's been quite well recognized in motorsport in this country, besides his time in karting. This year, incidentally, on 2 occasions, he's won the SASL, South African Guild of Motoring Journalists Young Gun of the Year, which is the competition to reward the young drivers in circuit racing and also in rallying in South Africa under the age of 25, and he could be in line for a nice 15,000 rand in the back pocket to help him for his championship next year, when I'm sure he's really going to put in a big charge to take the overall honours, although he hasn't given up on doing that right now. The gap now, 0.3 of a second up front with Dutoy and Jürgens. Mark Dutoy has only got a 0.4 of a gap over Brett Maybury. It's quite strange, really, that Maybury is usually the man who goes to the front, holds on for a few laps, and then we are inclined to see him decline. But today he didn't make a good start too, so maybe that's part of the factor. But really, in the race in Port Elizabeth at the last meeting, he was completely invincible. He just held on, took on all the pressure and the threat from the likes of the great champions of times gone by, Claudio Piazzamusso, and the championship leader Jonathan Dutoy, and held it all together. Right now, though, he's losing his way. You can see the car sliding around a fair bit too in certain of the corners, although I am seeing a fair bit of dust, maybe a few problems with the braking. And now, this is rather interesting. We seem to have Jürgens losing. He's losing something or the other. It's power, or something's gone wrong with the handling. And thus allowing Jonathan du Toit, with just 2 laps to go, to open up a fairly big lead, and at the same time, Mark du Toit is going to make it a du Toit 1-2. If Jurgens doesn't do something about this, the question is, can he do anything about it? Oh, my goodness gracious. Just the time that he thought there was going to be an opportunity of passing for Mark du Toit, and Maybury, I beg your pardon, Jurgens just put the car in the wrong place on the track. A racing accident, I do believe that was, and that's put an end to Mark du Toit's hopes, and a du Toit brother 1-2.
Peter, I think it's something to do with the handling, because it seems to be losing out in the corners. It could be maybe running out of fuel or a slow puncher. I don't know, it's difficult to say, but he suddenly lost speed, and that has played right into Jonathan du Toit's hands, because with this win he'll consolidate his point position, and I think he'll go to Port Elizabeth with a much less pressure on him.
Absolutely. I can also tell you that in the Ken class, and hopefully we'll see a bit of that soon, where Brian Krelling has now taken over from Andy Brown, and the checkered flag coming out superbly for Jonathan du Toit, taking the win by a fair margin. In fact, 7 seconds there from Brett Maybury. Morné Jurgens comes in 1.5 behind, and the 4th place person, there he goes, Warren Campbell. A fine effort for him as well.
Well, confirmation, Jonathan du Toit from Brett Maybury and Morné Jurgens. Martin Robinson, in fact, gets that 4th position ahead of Warren Campbell and Zach de Silva. In the Kent class, Brian Krelling gets his 6th victory of the season ahead of Andy Brown. Ian Schofield finishes in 3rd ahead of João de Silva, with Alan Mayer and Gary Hume completing the top 6.
Mark, there was a hefty knock you took on the back of Morné.
Yeah, I'm very annoyed. I'm very upset. I think he slowed down on that lap. I mean, I caught him over 150 meters in 1 lap. When I came to overtake him, he pulled out in front of me. I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I tried my best to avoid him, but I hit his back wheel. It was ridiculous, actually.
Well, Brian, you've been close to Andy Brown all season. That looks a little bit closer than normal.
Yeah, closer than comfortable. We qualified 0.02 of a second off each other. Fortunately, I took pole. We got away off the grid very well. Second lap, he took me. I stayed behind him, waited my chance off. Second last lap, I got by, but it was a hell of a ding-dong all the way. Yeah.
2 guys to watch in this 5th last race of the 2001 Saddle Formula Ford season are the man on pole position, that's Jonathan du Toit, who eventually got his win back after being given a 10-second penalty for running into the back of Morné Jurgens, who now is at the back of him on this particular grid. But alongside him it's Brett Maybury in the investment cars car, and he'll want to make a much better start than last time. Motors revving up to maximum to get those wheels getting good traction, and they all seem to get off to a fairly good start. Already Jurgens putting up some pressure, trying to look for a way between, getting into the first of the Vodacom corners through Telkom. Let's see, yes, he's done it in old style, what we've been used to in time gone by. That is, Brett Maybury has gone to the front as they go through Nashua.
Yes, he did. They did one of those magic starts from 3rd place on the grid. He got in front of Bodemov. So he's Brett Maybury first, followed by Jonathan du Toit and Morné Jurgens in 3rd place. Then is Van Beek and Robinson.
And Jonathan du Toit already looking to challenge and to take back that particular lead, as we're seeing the picture net car of João Silva come to a sudden death at the side of the track. But it's Maybury now. A lot of pressure on both sides of him behind him. Oh, and getting it all wrong. And it was Morné Jurgens in the truck end car. Du Toit had to take some evasive action there and use a bit of the dirt, which has dropped him back to 4th position. Now we've got him and Van Beek up there in 3rd.
Yes, Van Beek is a youngster come from karts. He's in his 3rd race now. He hasn't done much laps in the car, but he's going better and better all the time. And I think he's a youngster to watch, Peter. He's going extremely well.
Well, you can see that experience from karting, where it's also low seat on the ground, or pants on the seat on the ground, and the slick tyres, and he's holding off quite nicely, but I think that Dutoy's got the legs as he does, going through now down into the dark bowl, and he'll be able to try and reassert a position to get himself up to the top two and challenge for the lead. But for now, it's Mornay Jurgens who has stolen the thunder, and he's leading this race from Brett Maybury. Let's see if Maybury has got the will to come back. Of course, Jurgens' problem in the first race earlier was because when he got nudged from behind by Jonathan du Toit, his gear lever got a bit stuck. He got stuck in third gear.
Yes, when Jonathan bumped Mornay there, his gear lever broke. He was jammed in third gear. That's why he blew down, and his blew down eventually got caught and passed by a few people. But now he's all in place, and he's going like a bomb. I think he's got out there to prove a point, and I think that's what he's trying to do. But now Mark du Toit is breathing heavily on the back of Van Beek, and he's looking for space to get up and maybe give his brother a hand out there to fight the war.
Well, he came off the worst of all of them with the broken front right suspension after the coming together with Mornay Jurgens in the earlier race. But these the three championship contenders are going hammer and tong. Du Toit now leads by 28 points from Maybury, who there now in second position he is, and Mornay Jurgens leading at the moment. He's third in the championship on 68 points, 8 points behind. So Jurgens has to make up a big 36, with this being the fifth last race of the 2001 season. There's still a lot to play for. Van Beek in the car number 44, they're doing a fine job holding off Mark du Toit, and Warren Campbell in the Alpha Sales Van Diemen just behind, also staying in tow and finding his feet very quickly from Formula V in Formula 4.
Yeah, Warren is campaigning Formula for quite a few years. Then he decided to make a move. He bought the ex-Broch car, Tannet Garden, and he's going very well. This will be his third race today. Unfortunately, he will miss the P race. He's going to Germany, but then he'll be back with us for the rest of the year.
Jonathan du Toit has really got the bit between the teeth right now, because that fine overtaking maneuver over Brett Maybury sees him go back into second position, and only 0.7 between these top three as they come through to complete the second lap. Van Beek in fourth, then Mark du Toit, followed ever so closely by Warren Campbell, and behind Campbell, Martin Robinson in the first of the Z-Tech Challenger cars.
Yes, it is Jonathan du Toit there really is. I think if he wins the second race, it will make it a lot closer for him to seal the championship long before he goes to P. I know that P is not one of his favorites, so I think he's going to go all out to try and get into first place. But Jurgens is really on the move, and Jonathan must watch out, because with Brett Maybury so close behind, he really can't take the favorite line and give room to Maybury to come through. So he has to try to catch up. On the same time, he must be very conservative on what he does.
As they challenge here for the final few points in this little battle between du Toit, Van Beek and Campbell, can't tell you, Andy Brown has also got the bit between the teeth. He's leading the Kent class by about half a second from Brian Krelling at the moment, but there they are all spider-like side by side. They are Warren Campbell, fine bit of overtaking. They've been given a bit of room, and a bit of room in Formula 4 means you can get past, and that he did superbly over him and Van Beek.
Yes, Van Beek, I think, was trying to take the perfect line to get a better run out of the corner to give a challenge to Mark, and he left the road wide, and Warren Campbell went through, and he lost 2 places instead of gaining 1. But, you know, it's very tight out there. I think we have 2 races around the pit. We've got a race for first place, and we've got a race for 4th place.
You can see the experience of the top three starting to tell now, as they have opened up a 3-second gap over this pack. Oh, and that's a big spin, and will he be able to avoid him? He just does. Now, how's that for luck? He spins, should lose a position or two, but Van Beek has to take all the evasive action that he knows of, and he still stays behind him in the race. But Martin Robinson has benefited the most, because he's now shot through over them into 5th position.
Yes, so Martin was just the lucky standby. As he went through, he passed 2 cars at the same time, but now I don't think he's got the speed to match Campbell and Van Beek there, so I think very soon he will go back into 6th place.
He spun ever so quickly. He almost just touched the brakes, and the car went into spin. You can see some of the dust down there before, cement that's been put down obviously from a previous incident, so maybe a bit of oil. It wasn't just the brain, there was some oil that put him in that position, but he's fighting back very, very quickly. A very determined racer is Warren Campbell, and as as he knows, with single-seater racing, you've got to keep it straight and you've got to keep it on the black stuff. Otherwise, you are going to fall by the wayside. But that's allowed Mark du Toit to move into a fairly comfortable fourth position. He's still a good 5 seconds off the pace of the top three. As we're seeing the big battle now between Andy Brown in the Airx car and the UPS Science Van Diemen of Brian Krailing, battling it out for top spot and top dog in the 1600 Kent class this year. Brian Krailing leading going into this race by 29 points over Andy Brown, who did get the quickest lap in the first event, but now Brown knows that he's got to come back and to steal more points away, because the gap is as big as it is at the top between the top two in the Z-Tech Challenge. So it looks like both the Z-Tech and the 1600cc Kent battles and titles are going to go down to the wire this year.
Definitely with Brian Krailing won the first race, but Andy Brown is coming back strongly here, and he needs more than this win to challenge Krailing for the lead. Krailing is over 20 points in the lead, and Brown will have to repeat himself in P and East London if he, you know, he wants to be there at the end. With them, it is young Zach da Silva there in the Van Diemen 96 challenge car, and you know, this is good training for him to be among those two veterans there.
0.2 of a second. That's how close it is. They are on the very last lap. Du Toit is looking at every single option and all his experience to find a way through. Where could it be? Maybe on top of the West Bank Shelf.
It could be down the mine shaft, could be breaking for the chicane. He has to surprise Monet. He can't do on the obvious because Monet will be expecting it. So he has to try and do in a place where Monet will not be, you know, on his guard. And I think at bang the last lap, Monet will be watching everywhere for it. He'll try and drive a bit of a wider line where he can, like he's doing now, not to give Jonathan a chance to get a good run out of a corner. And he'll play defensive, which you got every right to do in his last lap and you're in the lead. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see.
So down the mine shaft for the very last time, and let's see how they line themselves up coming into the Dog Bowl. It's getting it a little bit loose as Jurgens in the trucked in car, but du Toit couldn't find the way through there, and I don't think he's going to be able to find a slingshot through the next bit of the circuit, which is a little bit too complicated, being this little kink. So if he can't do it at the final corner coming into the main straight, it's going to be the flag for Mornay Jurgens, and that'll help him close up in the main on second placed Maybury as he comes through. Yes, hands in the air. Superbly done too, and I think you really deserve that fine points haul, did Mornay Jurgens, and Jonathan du Toit will not be completely disappointed with the second, albeit the 4 points. And what a close affair that is. Maybury just gets in for the final podium position by 0.2 of a second from Mark du Toit, who nearly got onto the podium, but Maybury was good enough. And the following through, Warren Campbell, Herman van Beek, and Martin Robinson. The battle's still on in the Kent class. Brian Krailing should be coming through to take the checkered flag very, very shortly. And that he does too in fine style, just ahead of Andy Brown. So Krailing also furthers his lead in the Kent class championship with another points haul of 10 to the 6 of Andy Brown. In third place is going to be Ian Schofield.
Confirmation of the results. Third victory of the season for Mornay Jurgens. He will now pull closer to Brett Maybury in the battle for second position in the championship. Mark du Toit finishing in fourth. In the Kent class, Brian Krailing extends his lead over Andy Brown with 2 victories on the day. Ian Schofield finishes in third.
Mornay, a better race for you, that one.
Yeah, it was a better race. You know, we all know me and Jonathan had a bit of an incident in the first race, and I made up for it.
Car's obviously going nicely now.
Yeah, the car's not going too badly. You know, there's still a lot of work to be done to it. You know, just can't seem to squeeze that extra bit out of it. You know, I'm sure we'll get there.
Gives you some valuable points in the championship as well.
Yeah, it does. You know, I just think I should have had 2 wins today. You know, now we lose another 6 points. But what can you do?
So Jonathan du Toit leads Brett Maybury by 31 points, but look at that, Mornay Jurgens only 2 points further down in third position. Brian Krailing leads Andy Brown by 35 in the Kent class. There will be more of the same in Formula Ford, where legends are born.
Well, despite the rain, a fairly big turnout amongst the Sasol Formula Ford competitors. The season finale with a few scores still to be settled. Jonathan du Toit and Brian Crelin, the respective winners in the Z-Tech and the Ken classes. But for Mornay Jurgens and Andy Brown, McClay Stratham and company, still lots to do in these very tricky and trying conditions. Rain has been falling for most of the weekend. Naturally, the Z-Tech competitors will be on their wet weather tyres. This will be critical in terms of maintaining the grip. So the pole position for Mornay Jurgens ahead of Jonathan du Toit, and a fine effort from Warren Campbell and Claudio Piazzamusso in the Z-Tech class, and in the Ken class it's Brian Crelin ahead from Ian Schofield and Andy Brown. Alan Mayer is fourth. Jurgens on pole position, 10 laps around this East London Grand Prix circuit. The first straight is all important, getting yourself lined up as you go into Potter's Pass. You can just see the stream of water flowing from out these cars. Nino Venturi with me. Nino, Potter's Pass is always known as one of the most famous corners in South Africa, and they all seem to get through there very, very cleanly.
Peter, as it is, it's starting from a standing start. They only get there at a bit of a lesser speed. I think the proof will be in the next one when they arrive there, coming out into the pit straight at full speed, and those cars down in East London reach speed of about 240 km per hour. And you know, Potters and Rifles are called the big bulls corner, and that's what Formula Ford is all about in this condition. You really have to go and do your bit in treacherous condition. It's Mornay Jurgens in front, followed by Jonathan very closely. Jonathan struggled a bit in practice on Friday, but he got his act together now. Third is Claudio Piazza, followed by Richard Peacock, our driver from the UK, who is going extremely well.
And you can see they're going around fairly slowly through the complex here with Ian Schofield doing superbly well, getting past one or two of the faster Z-Tech cars as well. Andy Brown has pretty much wrapped things up in terms of second position as he goes through down into the main straight again to complete the first lap, and you can see how treacherous it is. Those tyres are not maintaining all that much grip, but still Jonathan du Toit believes he can out-drag Mornay Jurgens down into Potter's Pass. Is that a wise thing to do at this stage of the race?
Well, Pete, if you're behind, you get all the spray of the car in your face and makes it very difficult. So you have to go wide, try and find a clear line, and also you must find a clear line on the circuit where the water washes away and you can have a bit of extra grip. I see that Richard Peacock was trying to overtake Claudio there. He's a British driver, a lot of experience, so I think he's got a lot of wet weather racing experience. That will be good. There goes Brian Crelin in front of Jan Schofield.
And Andy Brown in third position there. Brown has had an up and down year. He really was on target to take the overall honours in the 1600cc Ken class, but then a few mishaps in the closing races saw Brian Crelin close up very quickly and take the honours. And there in the Mr. Video car, also doing a good effort.
It's Robin Da Silva from Planet Wheels. They sell exotic cars. He's bought a car for next year. It wasn't ready, so because Mookie is not racing the last two events because his wife's going to have a baby, and congratulations, it was a nice little girl. Well done, Mookie and family. Robin decided to have a drive in his car just as going. But there is Jan Schofield minus the nose. It's I think he tried a bit too hard and he's doing a bit of farming.
Track seems to be drying out a little bit here and there, but East London is known for the wet patches, if I can put it that way. So you've got to maintain the same line lap after lap after lap, especially in some of the tight and trickier corners. But Jurgens in the truck Den Mygale holding off the new champion for 2001, Jonathan du Toit, in the Swatbooks racing car, doing superbly well. Shiraz Jassid on the right of your screen in the blue Sasol and Fordback Swift. He's come on very nicely in the last few races he's done as the development driver for the 2001 championship. But the Silver, not all that much experience in the Z-Tech class, but putting in a fine effort here as well. And we see a very gentle, slow spin there, coming through and trying to regain his position, but he's going to fall down a couple of two. Warren Campbell, who's also missed a couple of races of late due to overseas business commitments. That has put him out of a potential podium position. He'll have to fight back. Jurgens' traction again showing that these tyres, albeit wet weather tyres, are finding it quite difficult. Maybe a little bit of oil lying here and there as well. But Brian Frayling has a big lead right now in the Kent class. Andy Brown coming through there in the Air-X air conditioner's vehicle, followed by the MBH energy car of Alan Mayer, who's been a stalwart for many, many a year in Sassel Formula 4. Again, one more lap in the ascendancy for Mornay Jurgens. You can see how misty and cloudy it really is. And to be quite honest with you, these youngsters have a superb amount of bravery. I'm not quite sure if I'd want to be in their shoes, let alone where my posterior is positioned right now, because some of the outfield here at the East London circuit is known to have taken a few scalps in years gone by.
Definitely. But you see, Peter, now again you get a dry patch, and then you get little rivers running across the circuit, down the bank and across. So as you hit that water, suddenly you have no control whatsoever. Yes, Piazza in the Miguel 99 is his second race this year. He's going very, very well. He had some brake problem. I think he still has with the car. So he'll probably be a permanent runner next year, which will be good for the field. But here it is. Jonathan hasn't stopped trying for a second. But in this condition, is very, very... I think he's being brave to move out into the spray and try and find a way past. But the Monet also, I mean, those two youngsters, all year they've been having serious battle. There's quite a lot of antagonism between the two, and they finished quite close. So it's give and take. I wouldn't predict anything right now, Peter.
And Jurgens, of course, has secured the second position behind Toy in the overall standings and the Z-Tech class. A very steady driver he's become this year. That man, the UPS Signsman Diemen of Brian Frayling, who in the beginning of the year had an ongoing tussle with Andy Brown, but then all of a sudden he seemed to settle down, obviously with the problems Brown was incurring as well, and took the bull by the horns to gain himself a very honourable title, because the competition in the Kent class for the older cars has been very tough. And we could also mention at this particular stage that this is the final race for the 1600cc Kent cars at national championship level. From next year, they'll be involved in their own 8-round championship in the Gauteng surrounding areas, circuits like Kyalami, Swartkorps Raceway, hopefully Lichtenberg, Blue Circle Raceway, and also Pakisa Freeway, trying to get it through the tight, complex bit. This is where the karts do some of their regular racing, and the bigger cars use it for the major national championship. You can see he was deciding to take, can we call it the slip road? Slip road in a sense of slippery, and the Lamborghini Ford. Now there's a combination.
That's Zach Da Silva in the Van Diemen 96. He's the first race in the weight and he's going exceptionally well. This young started in Kent last year, the few races. This year moved into Z-Tech and it's going very, very well. But here with Piazza closely followed by Richard Peacock, the British driver who is a veteran of many, many races. He runs a circuit in England. He's been very impressed with the way we race. His only complaint here is that the distance we cover to go to race meeting in the country, you could go to London to Moscow and back, which is all the way across Europe.
Well, these conditions are by far not unusual for single-seater races in the UK, obviously given their weather, and many of their circuits similar in terms of length. You can't afford to put your tyres on the white stuff there, Mr. Jurgens, otherwise Mr. Du Toit is going to sneak past you. Warren Campbell has recovered. He has the silver right behind him. They're having their own little race, which has also been a notable feature of the Formula 4 Championship this year. A heavy battle up front between 3 or 4 cars, maybe a small gap, and then other pockets of competitors taking each other on head to head. In this situation, though, the wisest thing to do is to maintain your position. The laps are counting down. Jurgens in the car number 4, ahead of car number 3. Not working numerically, but that's the way it is in the standings, with about a 3-second gap now back to 3rd position, and some of the Z-Tech cars are also going to make their way through past the Kent cars. We're seeing that happening already. Claudio Piazza doing an outstanding job. Of course, he is a Formula 4 champion of years gone by, as Richard Peacock is going to potentially squeeze him out here with Ian Schofield, and he does. Peacock in the Invest Cam car, really doing a fine job there, using some tactic and strategy. You can see how wet it really is now with the water on the lens. Now Piazza, in South African terms, has a lot more experience, as Brian Frayling knows he shouldn't have done that. That's going to cost him, yes indeed, because Andy Brown is going to take it, and Frayling is trying to do a couple of, what do they call it, 4-angle parking maneuvers to try and get himself back on the track, but he's a little bit in a pickle there, because because he had to wait for at least 2 cars to go through.
Yes, Joe Silva, who's had a very good season, he's been driving impressive the whole year. He's just taken second place, Peter.
And you can see that the quicker ZTEC cars, as you said, doing up to 230 kilometers per hour going through Potter's Pass, which they are approaching now. That, of course, is in dry conditions right now. And, you know, would estimate it's probably down to over 100 odd going through Potter's. That's still very, very nerve-wracking. And you've got to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. Andy Brown, as you can see, is almost circulating in certain parts, but the track is drying out. As much as it might be very, very misty, Joa Silva there in that second spot now in the picture net car, and still no change at the top of the table. Mornay Jurgens, who is involved in the trucking business with his father, Jonathan Toy, studying hard and helping Dad out with the new Swartkops Raceway. The Formula Fords always enjoy racing as well. Jurgens trying to make sure that he follows the right line, keeps away from those riverly streams, as you mentioned, that flow across here as they go through the complex again, up the short little back straight, a sharp right-hander, and back down towards the checkered flag as well. And they've been followed fairly closely in terms of their own little battle here with Imran from the Cape, now also residing in Johannesburg, putting in a fine effort too. But you can just see how tricky it really is. Of course, these are not full road tires, are they?
The ZTEC are racing on full wet tires, which is, if you get water, it's not bad, but if it becomes dry, but I think the circuit is still quite wait for them to work properly. As you were saying earlier, we got telemetry on those cars, and the speed they reach at the end of the straight, even in those conditions, is just about as quick as in the dry. You know, they're doing about 230, 240 as they reach the braking area, which is very, very telling for the quality of the cars and the bravery of the drivers. There, Jordan Dutoy is still trying hard. As you see, there's a bit of more rain in certain areas. Peacock made away past Piazza, and he's got a bit of a clear in front of him. I think Piazza's decided that a fourth place is better than trying too hard and living somewhere in the parking in the grass. But you know, the conditions are so treacherous that, you know, it's very difficult. But here, Brown, even taking advantage of Brian Krelling's spin, he's got a very secure first place in the Kent car if he keeps on the road.
And I'm sure he'll be back in his own right to try and take another title during the course of the year 2002. But a fine effort and win there for Mornay Jurgens, very closely followed by Jonathan Dutoy. Peacock takes the final podium position. Piazza Musa settles for 4th, and Warren Campbell ends in 5th position. And it's a very happy Mornay Jurgens, a fine win to end the season. And in the ZTEC, a great effort there by Andy Brown from US Silver, Brian Krelling recovering for 3rd position.
Congratulations, great race.
Yeah, it was a great race. Slippery out there, tough conditions.
Well, I bet you were glad you're in front, because some of the spray must have been terrible.
Yeah, I know, I'm glad I was in front. Yeah, I just said to myself, I can get to the line, yeah, stay in front, yeah, I can control the pace race. I wasn't pushing too hard. Jonathan was behind me, but I was just controlling the race from the word go.
I must say, in the wet it's one thing, racing hard, but he didn't give me any space. Try to pass him on the inside, he closed you on the inside, so you go to a wide line, so he moves on the wide line. And on the last corner going out, I went around the outside of him, he just locks up, pushed me off the circuit, so I'll go talk with the COC now.
The final 10 laps of 2001 Sasol Formula Ford. Who's going to get into the corner first? You can see it's a bit drier. This time out, it's Jurgens, followed there by his big rival. It was like a worldwide wrestling verbal match between the two of them. Now that it's drier, Nino, we might just see a few different kind of tactics.
Yes, you can see that Brian Campbell had a fantastic start. He's there with the pack. And I think he will do very well. Piazza, on the other hand, from 4th place is virtually at the back of the ZTEC Plus. I think something must have gone wrong at the start. We'll see, I think at the front will still be Jonathan and Mornay having the war. But I think Campbell, you know, he missed the last race because he was in Germany doing a Formula V race. And so I think he's hungry and he wants to prove a point, and he's going exceptionally well. Look at that. He's hanging Jonathan, and who knows? Yeah,
in that very, very bright, what is it, a mauvey pinky kind of color. That's the car, incidentally, if you've been following Formula Ford, that Kenneth Gardner first introduced into South Africa. And despite the very wet conditions, always good to see East London folk coming out and supporting. Now, that's a bit of mayhem there. Was that dust or was that water that Jurgens collected there?
I think it was what, and Imran in the Fly Africa car got caught up in there. Hopefully he could recover, and he went a bit flying in the Fly Africa car.
So Jurgens, De Toy and Warren Campbell. Yeah, that's Van Diemen of about 2 years old. 3 years old, Campbell, compared to the very modern yellow Swartkorps car, that's the Van Diemen as well, of Jonathan De Toy. Morné Jurgens just losing out a little bit here, but let's see who has the straight line speed.
See what happened. Morné went wide, Jonathan's lad on the inside, and his entering speed was a bit too fast, so he went wide and Morné got him inside again. But my surprise is that Warren Campbell is really hanging in there. That's a 98 Van Diemen. Jonathan has got a 2000 Van Diemen, and Morné has got a 98 Miguel. So it's quite a mix. And because of the closeness of the race, you can say the model of car doesn't really count. It's all up to the driver.
That's what Formula Ford racing is all about right throughout the world. How good the driver is, because the package, generally speaking, is pretty much on a par. Now, Warren Campbell losing out just a little bit in terms of distance. He's in third. In fourth, Richard Peacock again putting in a fine effort. And behind Peacock, there's a lively little battle developing.
Yeah, that was Martin Robinson with his first season in Formula Ford. He's got a challenge car, and he's gone very well the whole year. This youngster, I think next year will start to go places. He's shown a lot of talent, a lot of grit, and a lot of aggression and determination. You can see there, he's having a great battle with an old-timer and Richard Peacock. I think if he just follows him for a few laps and can learn a few tricks, he might be able to pass him and improve his driving skill. Peacock is 53. He's driven a single-seater most of his life, and I think he's going very well. Now, Piazza is closing up on them from his bad start, but I think the actual race is between this front bunch of three cars and Peacock and Robinson there for fifth place.
And De Toy, obviously a little bit inspired by his own personal anger in not being able to get past Morné Jurgens in the last outing, is now probably going to try and utilize some of the same tactics in maintaining pole position in terms of track space. Now it's Brian Crailing, who very well done, has moved to the head of the field in the Kent class. Andy Brown has been demoted to third. Now can Jurgens outrun De Toy going down the main straight into Potters? He'll have to try and slip in. He does. De Toy goes into his slipstream, but you can see the way Jurgens are just moving the car around, trying to ensure that there's no way he's going to hang on the back and slide through on the inside as they go into Potters here now and down to the Cabana. Some interesting names of corners we have at the very historic and old East London circuit. Of course, part of the circuit was used many, many moons ago, like 30 or so, 40, during the days of Formula One racing in South Africa. And part of the circuit, or most of it, is actually a normal open public road during the course of the week. It's merely closed off for the racing weekend, which makes the East London circuit very, very special. Ian Schofield in the Investcam Reynard, he's having a very good run after losing his nose, his car's nose cone, should I say, in the first outing. And he could just surprise you in terms of an overall top 3 position. Could he hold off Andy Brown, you reckon? Brown
Look, I think the car is capable and he is capable. It all depends if they don't make a mistake. But you can see just behind them there is Gary Hume in the ex-Jeff Morgan Hill Ray. And he had a very old car before and he wasn't shaping much. But now, since he's got this car, he's virtually on the pace and it's going extremely well. Schofield, well, Andy Brown has just passed him. He's in third place. They're all chasing Brian Crailing. And but here's the front. You see that in this race in the dry, they can slipstream each other and they can. In the wet, it was impossible because you can't see a thing. Now in the dry, because of the aerodynamic package the Formula 4 days, it's very easy to slipstream and just find a little bit of extra speed down the straight to pass the guy. See, it's happened quite a few times in the last couple of laps between Morné and Jonathan. And I think what you want to do is not be in front on the last lap, because then the guy in second passes you and you can kiss the trophy goodbye.
In fact, the whole top 6 or finishing order, if they are close enough, can change dramatically given the flag. Now a nice little move there by De Silva.
We got the uncle and nephew fighting it out there. Robin Da Silva is a veteran of single-seater from past, but first time in a Citec. He starts with his nephew. He's a newcomer in Citec, so that's quite nice. Uncle against nephew. But here we are again with the front 3.
Mornay Jurgens seemingly opening up a slight advantage, and Jonathan du Toit is trying to hold off Warren Campbell, which could allow Jurgens just to run away with this and take the overall honours. But this is the endeavour of Andy Brown to slip through on the inside of Brian Quayling. He does so superbly. Some very good, clean, well thought out passing manoeuvring there from Andy Brown from Victoria. Brian Quayling has a lot of pressure from Ian Schofield. They can see his name nice and clearly. Schofield, a great competitor about 10 years ago in Formula Ford racing in South Africa, put it to passes for a while, and he's come back. But this youngster, car number 14 in the Leroy Somer Swift, Martin Robinson, is definitely a prospect to look out for come the year 2002. I'd imagine he'd be in a slightly quicker, more modern car and use his karting ability that he learnt over the years, together with his experience so far in Formula Ford, to make big inroads. Now it's Quaylen from Schofield and Brown. Does Brown have a problem, or is he just playing?
No, just a slipstreaming, Peter. You know, look at now. There he goes again. You see, he got a nice link shot from Schofield. He passed one. He nearly passed Brian for first place. But that's how it is, you see. You know, it can change at any time. The situation is very fluid. And you can see now we have Shiraz Jasser in our development car fighting with Robin Da Silva and Zach Da Silva. You got Shiraz in a sandwich with the two Da Silva relation. But here we are again with Piazza and Richard Peacock and Martin Robinson. That's after he told me that he had a lot of brake problem. The car was slowing down a bit more, and the battery was going flat, cutting the engine power. But here we have a great guys again with Jonathan and Warren Campbell.
And Shiraz Jasser definitely putting on the pressure there. He'd like to maybe go home today as being the top Z-Tech Challenger competitor. Challenger cars are the older variety, like those 1992 Swifts. You can see just making his way through the traffic past Andreas Betray. Andy Brown using slipstreaming to perfect effect to once again take the battle to the front and see what Quayling and Schofield can do. In this group, Claudio Piazzamusso, who again this year finished top honours in a few of the karting endeavours that he's been taking part in. Of course, the family very much involved in the karting business, but it's good to see that the spirit of Formula Ford comes back with competitors like Schofield and like Piazzamusso and many others who really just can't stay out of a good single-seater like Formula Ford. Now Mornay Jurgens has Jonathan du Toit in the Swartkorps car behind him. Things change just a little bit there, with the gap now opening up to Warren Campbell, having had a spin. But he still is in third position, and I'm sure he'd be happy to go home with the final step on the podium behind his name. Piazzamusso, Richard Peacock in the Investec car, the Leroy Somer car of young Martin Robinson, who knows, could be in line for the Rookie of the Year awards.
Look, the young has driven very, very well, and I think he's been rewarded by good result. You mentioned earlier maybe he'll be in a better car. I think that the improvement in his driving from the beginning of the season to now, it's been mostly to his improvement in driving skill, and they've kept on improving the car. So I think if they do a bit more work in the car, Peter, I think the same car could be quite competitive next year.
Well, these three are really competitive. Quaylen now up at the top in the UPS car from Ian Schofield in the investment car, and then Andy Brown in the MX car. And they, of course, use the same rubber throughout the season. Of course, they do change tyres every couple of races, but their particular Avon structure is suitable for both dry and wet weather conditions.
It is an all-weather racing tyre, which is because of cost reasons. And there Schofield has lost his third place. He's gone a bit farming. There's wheel spinning on the grass. He gets on again, but he's lost touch and he's out for the contest for first place. You know, that was a very sad, but that's how it goes. You know, you snooze and you lose, and he's fun, and that's it. Now we have here Mornay Jurgens overtaking Andrea Petro. He's made a bit of a gap to Jonathan du Toit, and I think that's basically settled that, you know, he's got a few car lanes. I don't think there is, unless he makes a mistake, there's nothing Jonathan can do now.
And during the course of this year, unfortunately, we haven't seen, we are seeing a man with his hand up there, Claudio Piazzamusso, who has some kind of technical malady. The brakes are soft as a sponge, so he's going to have to take it very, very easy, circulate to the end, or maybe he'll retire. But But during the course of this year, Brett Maybury, one of the top 3 contenders, not here unfortunately, he's writing those all-important examinations, which means that Morné Jurgens has almost by default, in a sense, taken the second place as he takes the win from Jonathan du Toit. But Maybury, du Toit and Jurgens have really been outstanding this year. Jurgens takes the win, du Toit second, Warren Campbell fine third for him, with Martin Robinson, Richard Peacock and Claudio Piazzamusso taking the final points positions. And yeah, you can see thumbs up to the fan family and all the fans in East London. Brown from Crayland, Schofield, Sorber, Smith and Petro, the point scorers in the Kent class.
Well, Morné, another great battle, but you seem to pull away near the end.
Yeah, yes, once the rain started coming, the car was, I think my car was better than Jonathan's in the slippery conditions. And once I broke the toe as well, you know, in the dry yesterday we were more than half a second quicker than him.
So confirming the overall championship positions, du Toit the champion and the Kent Azitec winner. Jurgens second, Maybury is third. Crayland goes home very happy having won the Kent class. Brown will come back and fight some more. Sasol Dual Fuel and Ford South Africa proudly brought you Sasol Formula Ford, where legends are born. Proudly bring you Sasol Formula Ford, where legends are born.
Early season favourites included brothers Jonathan and Mark du Toit, they of Swartkop's fame, Morné Jurgens and Brett Maybury. And although the field for the first event at AA Kyalami was relatively small, the racing was as close as is traditional in Formula Ford racing all over the world. Matters were not made easier with a heavy rainstorm flooding the track, but making the best of conditions was Brett Maybury, as the rest of the field struggled to find the necessary grip. Due to the heavy rain delaying the race program on the day, only one race was run with drivers scoring double points. So it was Maybury who left AA Kyalami with a healthy points lead over Jonathan du Toit, Davy Broch and Chris Hart. Rounds 3 and 4 of the Sasol Formula 4 Championship took place at Killarney in Cape Town, once again with a relatively small field in the Premier Division for cars with the latest Ford Zetec engines. Spectators were not disappointed with the action on the track though, as Maybury, du Toit and Jurgens fought tooth and nail at the sharp end of the field, while fierce battles also raged down the order in the first division category for older cars with their Kent engines. In this category, Andy Brown had taken the championship lead after AA Kyalami, with Brian Grayling his closest challenger. In the Zetec class, Jonathan du Toit won round 3 ahead of Maybury, while Werner Schmidt took the Kent class. Morné Jurgens, Davy Broch, Jonathan du Toit and Brett Maybury put up a great fight for the lead in round 4, while in the Kent class, the battle for the lead raged between Werner Schmidt in front of his home crowd and Brian Crayland, with Matthijs Strydom leading the rest of the pack home. The three-way battle for the Zetec lead continued, with Jonathan du Toit eventually taking the flag ahead of Jurgens and Broch, but unfortunately because of the low numbers in that class, the results of the 2 rounds were declared null and void. Back to AA Kyalami for rounds 5 and 6, with Brett Maybury still in the lead of the Zetec Championship, although by a mere 2 points over Jonathan du Toit and only 6 ahead of Morné Jurgens. Werner Schmidt was leading the Kent class by 4 points over Brian Crayland, with Andy Brown only 2 points further back. Maybury took the early lead over Jonathan du Toit, Dean Hogg and Mark du Toit, while Morné Jurgens had to try and make his way up the order from the back of the Zetec field. In the Kent class, Andy Brown and Brian Crayling were at each other's throats after Werner Schmidt had left the series. Jurgens steadily cut through the field and set off chasing Maybury and Jonathan du Toit, the field safe in the knowledge that the numbers were sufficient for this event to count. Jurgens got into the lead after a marvellous drive, while Jonathan du Toit had succeeded in getting past Brett Maybury into second. The two then proceeded to pull clear of the rest of the field, while Andy Brown and Brian Crayling mirrored that battle for victory honours in the Kent class. After a race-long duel, Brown got the nod over Grayling, while, try as he may, Jonathan du Toit just couldn't find a way past Morné Jurgens, who hung on to take his first victory of the season. In round 6, Morné Jurgens got a good start off pole position and opened up a slight lead over Jonathan du Toit and Brett Maybury, with Mark du Toit dropping back into the clutches of the chasing pack. As the race progressed, however, Morné and Jonathan again pulled clear and re-engaged their battle of the previous race, the pair entertaining the crowd with a no-holds-barred fight for victory. In the Kent class battle, Andy Brown had pulled clear of Matthijs Strydom, who had been able to put the Z-Tech car of Martin Robinson between him and Brian Grayling. While at the front of the field, Jonathan du Toit had done a great job of holding off Morna Jurgens to record his first victory of the season. The battle lines in both classes had clearly been drawn, and we were only 6 races into the 20-race-long season. So, in the Z-Tech class, Jonathan du Toit had taken the lead with a 4-point cushion over Brett Maybury and 8 over Jurgens, while Andy Brown and Brian Grayling had emerged as the main contenders in the Kent class. To Swartkops for round 7 and 8 of the Sasol Formula 4 Championship, and the pattern continued at the front of the Z-Tech class battle. Jonathan du Toit, Brett Maybury, Morna Jurgens and Mark du Toit soon pulled well clear of the chasing pack, with the du Toit brothers reveling in their first race at the track redeveloped by their father Peter. Something was bound to give though, and it did, as Morna Jurgens challenged Brett Maybury for second position. The two touched in the fast right-hander at the end of the back straight, and Jurgens plunged off the track with a wayward left front suspension. It would turn out to be his first and only non-finish of the season. Many drivers found the new Swartkop circuit more challenging than it seemed at first glance, but not so for Jonathan, who had been able to control the gap to Brett comfortably, with Mark du Toit holding down third position. The battle at the sharp end of the Z-Tech class continued. Brian Grayling was leading the Kent runners, with his greatest competition Andy Brown way down the order. Having just been lapped by the race leader, Roy Patterson added his name to the list of those getting to know the circuit intimately. Grayling took the Kent class victory ahead of Ian Schofield, with Andy Brown classified 6th. Jonathan du Toit won his second race in a row in the Premier Division. Du Toit pulled away at the start of round 8, leaving his competitors to scrap for the minor placings, with Morna Jurgens working hard to make his way up the order from the back of the field. In the Kent class, Brian Grayling had his hands full to contain Matthijs Strydom, with Andy Brown also trying to make his way up the order, having started the race in 6th. Again, things were bound to come to a head as Grayling and Strydom touched at the tabletop, the inevitable result allowing Andy Brown to sneak through. Strydom dropped to 4th, and Grayling eventually recovered to 6th. Amazingly, Grayling's and Brown's results for the day were exactly the same. No such problems for Jonathan du Toit, though, as he continued his march to the flag, but Brett Maybury outbraked himself at the hairpin and would finish 3rd behind du Toit and Jurgens. Having taken 3 wins in a row, with his main competitor suffering from various forms of bad luck, Jonathan du Toit went to Pekiza Freeway in the Free State Goldfields with a consolidated lead in the championship, so the pressure was on the likes of Morna Jurgens and Brett Maybury to come up with the goods in their first and only visit to the home of the South African Motorcycle Grand Prix. Mornay Peterson put an end to his run of 5 consecutive points finishes with this spin, while in the Kent class the battle continued. Brian Grayling, who was trailing Andy Brown by 9 points, leading Brown and Matthijs Strydom. Alan Meyer spun and would not repeat his fine 3rd place at Swartkops. Grayling and Brown would be caught by Strydom, with the threesome finishing just 2 seconds apart, while in the Z-Tech category, Jonathan du Toit had cleared off into the distance, leaving Maybury and Jurgens to fight among themselves for 2nd place. Du Toit had clearly taken the initiative in the championship and was doing a great job, taking his 4th consecutive victory ahead of Maybury and Jurgens in that order. Maybury took the early lead in round 10, with Jurgens dropping back to 4th as Harmen van Beek spoiled the party for them after finishing an excellent 4th in the previous race. As usual, the action in the Kent class was fast and furious, as Andy Brown and Brian Grayling were joined by the Z-Tech cars of Mansour Mukadim and Imran Kamuddin, who had slotted in the order on the road ahead of Matthijs Strydom. Meanwhile, Jonathan du Toit had broken free, with Morna Jurgens now up to 2nd ahead of Brett Maybury. Jurgens proceeded to reel in the race leader, and he would eventually catch du Toit to take his 2nd victory of the day. In the Kent class, Brown took it from Grayling and Strydom, but a lack of numbers meant that those results would not count. They did count in the Z-Tech class, though, as Jonathan du Toit had extended his lead over Brett Maybury to a massive 23 points, while Andy Brown had an 8-point lead over Grayling in the Kent class. Back to AA Kailami for the 3rd time this season, and rounds 11 and 12, with Jurgens and Maybury determined to do something about Jonathan du Toit's domination. This led to some great racing between the trio as each desperately tried to get the better of the others. Unfortunately, outside forces took care of the outcome as oil on the track caused just about the entire field to go off at the bottom of the mine shaft. With the field decimated, race officials had no choice but to stop the race. After the restart, disaster struck Andy Brown as he slithered off at Goodyear, handing the win and the points lead to Brian Craylen. Joao Silva scored his best result of the season in third, while in Z-Tech, Jonathan Dutoit continued with his inexorable march to the title with his fifth victory of the season, ahead of Jurgens and Maybury. Jurgens had jumped into the lead at the start of round 12, chased hard by Dutoit and Maybury, although Brett was forced to pull off the track with mechanical maladies, but he would be able to rejoin and finish fourth behind Mark Dutoit. The fight up front, however, was as fast, as furious as ever, with some of the most physical racing we've seen so far, as neither Dutoit nor Jurgens was willing to give an inch. This battle continued to the flag, with Dutoit again taking the win, while in the Kent class, Brian Craylen walked away with 2 victories on the day. When the Sasol Formula Ford Brigade arrived in Port Elizabeth for rounds 13 and 14 in August, Jonathan Dutoit knew that he was in such a strong championship position that all he needed to do was to drive for the points, minimizing the damage to his lead. What he didn't need was to get involved in another physical battle and score a non-finish, so he followed the script and stayed in touch with Brett Maybury and Morna Jurgens out of trouble. The usual suspects were in the spotlight in the Kent class race, as Andy Brown knew that he had to try and win back some points from Brian Craylen after his disastrous outing at AA Kailami, where he gave away 19 points to the new championship leader. But he just couldn't get it together, finishing third behind Craylen and Matthijs Stradom. At the front, Brett Maybury took his second victory of the season, the first since round 1 in February, ahead of Jurgens and Dutoit. Having taken 7 points from Dutoit, Maybury took the lead at the start of round 14, chased by Jurgens and Dutoit, who was quite happy with the result of his strategy in the previous race. In the Kent class, Andy Brown found it difficult to get to the front runners, and a spin later would drop him to fifth behind Brian Craylen, Matthijs Stradom, Alan Meyer and Joao Silva. Meanwhile, Jonathan Dutoit had gone off the track exactly what he didn't need, and fortunately for him, he wasn't hit by a spinning Martin Robinson and could rejoin, albeit in fourth behind Maybury, Jurgens and Warren Campbell. Maybury made it 2 in a row ahead of Jurgens. In the championship, Dutoit was 23 points ahead of Maybury, who had pulled a 6 points gap over Jurgens, while in Kent, Brian Craylen had opened up a gap of 26 over Andy Brown. Dutoit and Jurgens returned to the scene of their earlier scrap for rounds 15 and 16 at AA Kailami, but this time it was less aggressive, and Jonathan was able to pull away from Mornay as the race progressed. Andy Brown and Brian Craylen also fought an early battle for the lead, although Craylen went ahead in the end to take his 5th consecutive victory. But the drama came as Morna Jurgens and Mark Dutoit fought for second. Jurgens moved over and took out Dutoit's right front suspension, resulting in immediate retirement, with Jurgens also suffering damage in the process. That allowed Brett Maybury to go into second position, which he held onto till the end, with Jurgens only just making it in third ahead of Martin Robinson. So Jonathan Dutoit took a relatively easy win, his 7th in 10 races ahead of Maybury and Jurgens. The 3 Musketeers continued their battle in round 16, although Jonathan Dutoit had virtually no pressure to deal with, unlike Morna Jurgens, who knew that Mark Dutoit was on his way from the back of the field. Andy Brown again tried his best to take away some points from Brian Craylen, although Craylen was in exactly the same position as Jonathan Dutoit and could afford to wait. In the end, Craylen did take the victory ahead of Brown. Meanwhile, Morna Jurgens had decided the best way to stay clear of a still fuming Mark Dutoit was to win the race, which he duly did ahead of Jonathan Dutoit and Brett Maybury, his 3rd of the season. Going to Elder Scribanti in Port Elizabeth for the 2nd time this season, Morna Jurgens was on a roll, and he needed to be, as he was lying in 3rd position in the championship, 2 points down on Brett Maybury and a massive 33 behind Jonathan Dutoit. The championship wasn't over yet, as 44 points were still available, so Jurgens took both victories. But with Dutoit finishing 2nd on both occasions, he had done enough to clinch the title. In the Kent class, insufficient entries again meant that no points were awarded, although Brian Craylen had also already taken the championship. The final 2 rounds of the 2001 Sasol Formula Ford Championship took place at the very wet Mercedes-Benz Grand Prix circuit in East London at the end of October. And as both titles had already been won, there was only pride to drive for. Morna Jurgens and Jonathan Dutoit renewed their rivalry, putting up a great show for the East London faithful. The tricky conditions even caught out experienced campaigners like Brian Grayling, the newly crowned Kent class champion, spinning in front of his pit crew and dropping to third behind Andy Brown and Joao Silva in the process. Mona Jurgens was able to hold off Jonathan du Toit to take his fourth consecutive victory, with Richard Peacock getting his best result of the season in third. The final race of the season, in somewhat drier conditions, saw a great battle in the Kent class between Brian Grayling, Ian Schofield and Andy Brown, with the trio almost glued together and crossing the line in that order. At the sharp end of the field, Jonathan du Toit, Mona Jurgens and Warren Campbell put up a similar show, the three of them swapping positions in virtually every corner. It was a great way to end a season in which the titles in the two classes went to two worthy champions. If the numbers were a bit thin on the ground this year, next year promises more entries, with the Z-Tech class the only one with national championship status. Jurgens won the final race of the season, and as the final point standings show, Jonathan du Toit ended the year with a margin of 15 points over Jurgens and Brett Maybury in third. In the Kent class, Brian Grayling beat Andy Brown by 25, with Matthijs Strydom in third. Sasol Dual Fuel.